Welcome, guys, to the Card Popularity Snapshot. This is the 22nd one that I have done. What I do at the end of every competitive season is look at the top 100 decks used by players on the ladder, record them, and find the killer deck combos, the most popular cards, and do a little bit of analysis on them, try to predict where the metagame is going from here, and just see which cards are doing well and which cards aren't. So, with that being said, let's take a look at some of the cards that have been performing the best. Just to start off with, the Log, way up this snapshot from the last one. It's been popular for a while, but the nerfs to Zap and the Log hurt Zap more. The Log still necessary in order to take out Goblin Barrels. It gets a lot of value just against all these ground swarms, Skeleton Army being very popular. Is a good target for the Log. The Log way high up at the top. It almost doubled. And in fact, it did double its popularity. It was 31 usage before, and now it's 63. So in twice as many decks. It's not auto-include. It's not anywhere near as high as some of the other cards that we have seen in the past that have been dominant. The Log actually was in a stronger position a few months ago, up into the 80s in appearances out of the top 100. But 63, very solid. It is a staple now, especially of big decks that need a quick and simple spell to be able to knock those small little troops right off the tower and protect your own troops from enemy defensive setups. Really quick things like Skeleton Army or Tombstone that players will often use to defend against a Hog Rider or a Giant, just getting knocked apart by the Log. Just really good, solid, cheap card. A lot of players will actually even play both the Log and Zap in their deck. But pretty much everyone on the ladder is playing at least one of them. So, that brings us to our next card. Zap dropped down 29 points in terms of popularity. That, I think, is primarily due to the fact that it can no longer kill goblins in one hit. So the Goblin Barrel will break through. Your Zap spell no longer quite as effective as it was before, but still very good on offense. It does get some value on defense, but usually you want to be hitting like an Inferno Tower or a Skeleton Army set up by your opponent or something on their side of the arena, oftentimes to reset an attack. Zap still is getting a lot of value, one of the favorite cards from top players. It has a very high skill cap, so it's hard to get used to and figure out exactly the perfect situation that you want to use it in. You might need to save it sometimes when you would want to use it, but you could get more value from it later. But Zap performing very, very well. I highly recommend including in your deck if you need a cheap spell and don't have the Log, or if you're doing a big beatdown push and need a way to get rid of Skeleton Armies, or to be able to stun and reset Inferno Towers. So the next card is actually number 2 on the popularity snapshot. It's the top troop in the game right now, the Minions. Extremely excited for these guys because they're a common card, so they're easy for free-to-play players to get and upgrade. They're relatively easy to counter, so it's not like something that's super dominant in the metagame like Elite Barbarians were, where you couldn't really get a defense up well against them. But they're a very versatile and useful card for players who know when to play them and the exact tile that you want to set them up in. They work very well against Graveyard, which has been dropping in popularity due in part to the fact that minions are becoming better and better. They do extremely well against any ground troop. They have just enough DPS to be very effective and get the job done. So very happy with how minions have been performing recently. Skeleton Army, actually a massive increase in appearances. We haven't seen this big of a jump for Skeleton Army since the time when they decreased its elixir cost from 4 to 3. So Skeleton Army performing extremely well right now. Jumped up 26 spots rather to have 42 appearances in total. That means it's in almost half the decks at the top of the ladder. Extremely effective on defense and very good for counter pushing. Mega Minion has dipped down a little bit. Still seeing a lot at the top, and I would definitely classify it as one of the top tier support troops. It does get killed by Lightning, which has been surging back up toward the top in a metagame that sees a lot more Musketeer and Mega Minion and kind of cheap glass cannon type cards that we call them. Cards that deal a lot of damage but that don't have a whole lot of health. But Mega Minion, just like Minions, able to fly high above their ground troop counterparts. And are doing quite well on counterattacks. Mega Minion sometimes gets 1 swing, sometimes it gets 2 swing on the tower if it's ignored, and that winds up being a lot of damage, actually. Giant, however, the undisputed king of tanks in this snapshot. He is the most popular win condition, and it's been a long time actually since we've seen a win condition actually being used in 1/3 of all decks. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. The tank meta is real, and Giant is the king of the tank meta. There's a lot of different deck archetypes that he's being used in. The Giant Bowler, Giant Graveyard, Giant Giant Prince Beatdown are all really popular right now. Giant Prince being the top deck right now means that this Giant deck is doing very well for itself. I'm going to actually play one of those Giant Prince decks for you all to enjoy. But if you're playing a big tanky beatdown deck, Giant is performing quite well. You can play Golem. You can see it down here at the 14 mark. Golem is viable, and it's becoming a little bit more popular as a counter, in fact, to the Giant decks because it just builds up for an even bigger push. It's more elixir that you can invest into the lane and more hit points to go along with it. But Giant and Golem, very strong right now. Giant as a rare card, obviously, is a little bit easier to upgrade, so it might be your preferred tank of choice. Lightning, however, being paired with Giant quite often is a great way to take out Inferno Towers, kill those glass cannons that we talked about earlier, and it's just becoming the new, accompanying spell to Giant. We saw Giant Poison be extremely effective on the ladder, and in tournaments, in fact, for a many months at a time at the end of last year, and I think that Giant Lightning is making its debut on the scene in a very similar format. It's a deck format that's very good against some of the zap bait because it often can utilize some of the cheaper cards like Log in order to wipe out oncoming swarms. It'll usually actually even have a card like Furnace that can deal splash damage to a lot of troops like the Minion Horde, and I think that the Lightning is a perfect accompaniment to the deck to be able to ensure that you can take down the big defensive setups that a lot of those decks will have that try to prevent you from reaching the tower. But speaking of Furnace, there it is right behind Lightning. It's at the 30 mark. It jumped up from 12 last season. Players were really making a lot more use out of Tombstone than Furnace last season, but this most recent season, Furnace has shot back up in the rankings as one of the other ways to combat the oncoming swarms, get a little bit of chip damage, and especially if you can get it up to snuff in terms of levels, if you can get those Fire Spirits onto your opponent's tower with tanks in front of them or without tanks, you're doing quite well. Musketeer right behind. It actually dipped down a little bit thanks to the increase in Lightning usage, but it's surprisingly good against Executioner, especially because a lot of Executioners are under-leveled on ladder right now. But overall, Musketeer, a top-tier card, and I would say that this is kind of one of the last A-tier cards. You see a lot of other cards that are kind of slipping down and not quite in the position that they used to be in terms of strength, but Musketeer is still doing quite well. Ice Golem took the biggest hit of any card that I've seen in a long time, down 49 points in popularity usage overall. It's a massive hit to the card. It was seen in 77 of the top decks last season, and it's only in 28 now. So it's really quite well balanced now, and it makes for some good pushes if you need a nimble 2 elixir mini tank to throw into the deck, so it can provide some cover for a Goblin Barrel, for instance, or minions, or a Hog Rider. But Ice Golem overall no longer the just dominant card that it used to be. Cannot get some of the insane positive elixir trades that it used to be able to because the Ice Nova radius was reduced, and it's just not hitting as many things as people need it to anymore. Elite Barbarians also a lot less popular. Ice Golem was one of the most popular cards to deal with Elite Barbarians, just dragging them to the other side of the arena. And so with the drop in usage of those guys and the corresponding nerf, we don't see a whole lot of Ice Golem anymore. Elixir Collector, it's just kind of sitting at the same spot. It's using the time that you generate elixir to try to build up a big push. Oftentimes, we'll see those in Golem decks, in those Giant decks that need a lot of elixir in order to make their pushes work. And so players like to play defensively. They stick an Elixir Collector at the back and let them pump up. I don't think that if Lightning becomes more and more popular, that Elixir Collector will stay at where it is. I think it will actually probably continue to dip down. We saw some players messing around with Rocket season before last. So Elixir Collector, the easy target of Rockets and Lightnings, may not have as many legs as this card popularity snapshot may suggest. Hog Rider at 24, it actually made a little bit of an uptick. I don't think it's a very strong archetype right now. It's not doing quite as well as I would have expected from previous performance. Hog Cycle is probably one of the best ways to play Hog Rider right now. A really quick Hog Rider deck is probably better right now than the like trifecta decks that have been popular recently with like a Musketeer and a Nice Golem. So a lot of players still doing quite well with Hog Rider cycle decks, and along with Giant, those are probably two of the most popular and easy to play win conditions in the game right now. Tombstone dropped a lot. We talked about that a little bit earlier, corresponding to Furnace. Players aren't really doing Lava Hound quite as much, or Graveyard. Those two decks synergize very well with Tombstone, and so the drop in those cards as a win condition means that Tombstone is not getting as much use relative to the Furnace that it did before. Goblin Barrel, however, huge uptick. We also, same thing with the Skeleton Army. We haven't seen this level of usage for Goblin Barrel since the time when they reduced its cost from 4 to 3. So the fact that it is now a lot cheaper and doesn't have as many spells incoming to take it out makes it a little bit more viable. Of course, Zap and the Log were both nerfed in this most recent round of balance changes, so that nerf caused fewer players to play those cards, and as a result, the metagame shifted to allow more players to use Goblin Barrel as one of their win conditions. Princess also making a comeback. This is actually one of the surprising changes from the balance update. The fewer logs there are out there, the more princesses people have been. Arrows making a comeback. They're being used primarily to take out those minions, deal with the hordes like Skeleton Army or Minion Horde whenever you're up against a Zap 8 deck. They've always been played for a really long time in Lava Hound decks, but they're now seeing usage in other archetypes as well. Executioner, the big story. There's only 18 of them used, but that is a really big number because they were just released on Friday. They were released on Friday, and already 18 players at the top of the ladder were using them in their decks. So I think that really speaks to the strength of the card, mostly because a lot of those players didn't even get the Executioner to like a very high level. Didn't even like get him leveled up. He was like level 4, 5, 6 in some of these decks, competing with max level cards. That's pretty insane. There was actually a great video by Yarn from Orange Juice that took a look at the Executioner. He does a little bit of a mini knockback against troops whenever he hits them, and so he's actually doing very, very well in ladders and in tournaments. The fact that he can hit things that are behind him makes him very hard to counter. He's a relatively slow and quite tanky troop. He can survive a lightning, so I think Executioner is probably the best card in the game right now. I'm playing him in a lot of the beatdown decks that I've been using, and compared to some of his competition, like the Bowler and the Wizard, he just blows them out of the water. So Executioner, very good. Fireball took a big hit recently. The fact that you can get ample splash damage from Executioner and from other sources like Princess, people feel like they're getting enough damage out of things like arrows and the log. They just aren't turning to the Fireball. Fireball is kind of in an awkward spot right now because it cannot kill the glass cannons that you would want it to without an accompanying zap. And so you get a good bit of damage off with it, but players are really looking for a spell that can actually kill the troops that are coming in, or a spell that is just going to chip them away and distract them while their bigger troops are actually doing the punishment themselves. So Fireball took a big hit. Prince really rose up through the ranks a lot. He's actually only really being used in this one Giant Prince beatdown deck. This is the only archetype that we see him in. In fact, all 16 appearances of the Prince were in this Giant Prince beatdown deck. So he is not really back in the metagame in terms of a card that is like useful in a lot of different deck situations, but he is back in terms of the fact that he works really well in this one deck archetype. Giant Prince has returned. Balloon sitting right at the exact same spot that it was before. I think it might actually be one of the few cards that didn't rise or fall recently in this last snapshot. We have some innovation in terms of the types of decks that players are using Balloon in, though. We actually saw a Golem Balloon deck do quite well. It was one of the top decks, in fact, this last season. So Balloon, it's a card that I really like that it exists. I think that it is a good anti-siege card. I think that if Expo or Mortar become popular, that Balloon and Royal Giant ought to make a comeback. But I really like Balloon as like a gotcha card as well, because a lot of players aren't really prepared for it. It's popular enough that everyone knows how to deal with it, but it's not really one of the most popular win conditions right now, so difficult to say exactly where the balloon is going to go up or down from here, but it's doing decently well right now. Bowler, big drop down to 14. Executioner just outclasses him now. When people get Executioner leveled up even more, they're just like not even going to play Bowler anymore. Wizard already is like not played at all, and the same thing might happen to Bowler if we don't see an Executioner nerf. I really think Executioner can stand to both have a hit point and a DPS nerf in addition to the bug fixes. The fact that it's able to knock back troops, that it has like a basically a laser beam attack. It like hits everything that gets placed between where it is and where the axe goes to, and the fact that it can hit things that are behind it as well, just makes it overpowered and makes Bowler very difficult to pull off effectively. Bowler can still work in some heavy beatdown decks. It can serve as the tank in a graveyard deck archetype. You still need a little bit more hit points for something like that relative to the Executioner, so that's going to be kind of his niche going forward, I think. Freeze, heavy hit by this recent round of change. I can't really say why. Freeze has always kind of done relatively well at the top of the ladder. In fact, the drop in Fireball made me think that Freeze actually would do quite well this season, so I'm kind of surprised that it's so low, especially with some of the hard-hitting troops that we see, but the tank meta doesn't necessarily need to rely upon Freeze. Whenever you have a big body on your opponent's side of the arena, there's not really too much use for a card that can stop your opponent from shooting for a few seconds, because you have so many hit points, you just don't even care if they're shooting at you, right? So that's the idea behind a lot of these beatdown decks for not using Freeze. And I don't know, Balloon decks and Hog Rider decks are still making some use of it. I think Graveyard is actually making some use of Freeze still, but it's kind of a marginal card at this point on the ladder, and not really used at all in tournaments because it has a shorter duration there. Archer's big drop, just like absolutely huge drop. They die to Executioner from one swing, so I mean, it's hard to justify using Archers now relative to the minions. They're harder to control. They can split, and that gives them some viability just as kind of a first proactive card to play. I think they're still being used in like some siege decks, but Archers are really hit hard recently, even with Fireball not really being used very much in the metagame. Mini P.E.K.K.A. actually made a comeback as a counter to Executioner. He can hit pretty hard. He two shots to the Executioner, so as long as the Executioner doesn't get like a stun off on the Mini P.E.K.K.A., it's doing well. Rocket dropped down a little bit. It's played in siege decks and like sometimes in like hog decks and kind of in weird other situations. I'm actually using Rocket in some of my siege decks, and I am a fan of it. But I don't think that it's really going to make too much more inroads unless Elixir Collector becomes very popular. Next card is the Ice Spirit. It also dropped a lot. There was a damage debuff to the Ice Spirit where it can no longer bring the minions within one shot range of the tower. So minions are benefiting from that, and Ice Spirit clearly has taken a big hit, despite the fact that one of the cards that competes with it, Zap, also got nerfed, and another card that competes with it, Ice Golem, also got nerfed. Minion Horde. We're not going to go through every card, by the way. Minion Horde is one of the last cards that I'm going to review. It's doing quite well because it's accompanying other Zap bait cards like the Goblin Barrel and like the Skeleton Army. That's kind of the niche archetype that it still works in, and so that's kind of the place that we see it in. Baby Dragon is being used in some Golem decks, similar to the decks that we saw at the King's Cup, actually, a long time ago. Graveyard actually dropped down a lot. I think that's because Executioner serves as a pretty good counter to the Graveyard. He can hit in like a 360 degree arc around him and hit everything in front of him. So he's taken out Graveyards left and right. Haven't really been too worried about a Graveyard in any game that I had Executioner to play. The Elite Barbarian nerf wasn't that massive, and I think people are kind of overreacting to how far down they've gone. They're actually pretty good against some of these big, heavy tanks, so I expect to see a comeback for the Elite Barbarians. Maybe not as popular as they were before. That 4% damage and hit point nerf, or rather, I think that the damage nerf was more than 4%. It might have been a 4% like number damage nerf, but I think they also nerfed the hit speed, so it was like a 8 or 9% DPS nerf in total. But those nerfs were relatively minor. They're still hitting pretty hard. They're scary if you don't have a good counter to them. So Elite Barbarians dropped far in the ladder, but they're still decent. I think they'll make a comeback. Expo really far down. It kind of had like a little flash in the pan the season before last, where it was quite useful. We saw 9 appearances of that. The top deck being used by Pompeo was an Expo deck, so I think that inspired some imitation. But there was some usage of Royal Giant, and there was some of their heavy beatdown decks that make it hard for an Expo to connect, and so that's just why you don't see a whole lot of Expo right now. Anytime beatdown is really popular, Siege just becomes insanely difficult to play, because Siege is like the counter to control decks. Whenever a deck wants to play extremely defensively and just kind of throw pop shots off at you, one here, one there, throw a Hog Rider in there, throw a Goblin Barrel, and then just defend hard. Siege works really well against that by creating a big target that you have to take out, and if you can't take out the target, you lose. But Siege doesn't work against beatdown because they actually can answer those Siege placements very well. They can drop the giant like right on top of your Expo, the Golem, and then just wind up taking you out really quickly. So big bodies are the current meta. Giant, Golem, Lava Hound even, to some degree, Royal Giant to some degree, are all doing very well. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the snapshot. I want to take a look at some of the decks that we used up at the top here. We mentioned some of them previously, but I will be playing the top 3. We've got a Giant Prince deck here at the top. It's Giant Prince, Furnace, Lightning, the Log, Zap, and then you can choose either Mega Minions or Minions, and then either Executioner or Musketeer. The next one is Hog Rider, Goblin Barrel, Control. It's a Hog Rider, Goblin Barrel, Minions, Princess, the Log, Skeleton Army, Ice Golem, and Inferno Tower. Very defensive, control-oriented deck. And then the third one is a Golem beatdown deck. It's running Golem, Baby Dragon, Elixir Collector, Mega Minion, the Log, Lightning, Archers, and Tombstone. So I will take some questions from the audience just as soon as we get a few matches under our belt. I want to continue this broadcast segment so that we can get it recorded for the fellows over on YouTube. Let me switch the overlay over so that we can take a look at the first deck that we're going to be playing here. First of all, we can just see the most popular cards in the ladder right now over there. On the right, it's the Giant Prince. No, actually, sorry, that is the first deck that we're actually going to be looking at. The current deck list got moved around a little bit because we were playing around with our overlay for the stream. But that is the current deck list that we're going to try out first. It actually got modified by Marcel P. He changed the Zap to a Tornado. I'll switch it back to Zap just for the purposes of this match. I think I want to go over to a Grand Challenge to do the game itself. But it works very well. There's kind of no wrong way to play it. I'll say that, and then I might wind up losing this match anyways. But I'm a big fan of the Giant Prince archetype overall. I think that it can do very well. So we'll start off easy here. Log is going to roll through the Fire Spirits. Furnace is going to spit some of the Fire Spirits of our own to be able to take out the Baby Dragon. That's a really easy counter. That was a 6 Elixir defense from me to kill a 9 Elixir push from him. And we still have quite a bit left on our end. So we'll use this Giant to distract this Princess. I'm not really too worried about killing her super quick. He actually throws down a Zap to deal with the Fire Spirits there. Unfortunately, I don't get my Zap back quick enough, so I am going to lose it to the Inferno Dragon. But we've got a big push here from the Mega Minion and Executioner here. We'll see if we cannot get the Executioner at least to get a few swings off on the tower, since we have a pretty good Elixir advantage, and he keeps spinning the Elixir on defense. So I think that's 2 swings from the Executioner. Indeed it is. We have a little bit of an Elixir advantage against him. Once again, we're going to start out with the Furnace. That worked well last time. I think he's got Goblin Barrel in hand right now, and I have 2 hard counters to that in the Log and Zap, so I'm not really too worried about that. We're going to let this Baby Dragon kind of loop on in here. It'll target onto the tower, or rather the Furnace. I'm not really too concerned about losing the Furnace. It is a nice chip damage, but when you're playing against a Zap bait deck that has a lot of responses to the Fire Spirits by playing things like Princess, and losing the Furnace is not the worst thing in the world. It's basically a 4-for-4 trade to get the Furnace and the Baby Dragon exchange. So I'm going to save up the Elixir for Lightning so that we can take out this Inferno Dragon rather. We'll do that right now. We didn't get actually our Executioner in close enough, so we're going to have to zap that down. But Giant's on the tower. He's going to get several swings off. Executioner does win the one-on-one trade with the Baby Dragon quite appreciably, so he'll knock that thing out, and he'll go get another couple of swings off on that left side tower without too much trouble. So I think that at this point I might actually want to switch to the right side. I can get a Lightning and maybe a little bit of chip damage off onto the left in order to be able to take it out, so I'm not really worried about being able to do that. I probably should have held on, actually, and hit that Inferno Dragon a little bit harder. I almost took a lot of damage, but thankfully the Executioner there saved me. Executioner, the real OG in that exchange. We can zap that Princess and kill her. I'll hold on to this Lightning in case he plays something else. There it is. So we'll hit the tower, the Inferno Dragon, and the Baby Dragon with that. As you can see, the Giant's just going to town on that right side tower. It's very hard to make a comeback from that big of a deficit. I don't think that we've played Prince very much this game. Prince is actually kind of only being used as a way to get the like other tanks that your opponent is using out of the way. So with that, I think that we are pretty much clear to drop the 2-0 on him at this point. So thank you very much for watching that first match. I really like this Giant Prince deck, and I think that it's got legs to go pretty far in the metagame. Let's take a look at the second deck now that I want to play. This is the Goblin Barrel Hog Rider control deck. This is a super defensive deck, and it thrives on just getting positive elixir trades and nuking your opponent when they aren't really expecting it by getting a lot of damage on the tower all at once. Hog Rider plus Goblin Barrel or Skeleton Army being some key combos. If your opponent isn't letting you do that, of course you can just chip away at them by getting little damage here and there from the Hog Rider, Goblin Barrel, and even from the Princess. But overall, that's going to be kind of the main strategy that you will employ here. So he's going to spin the log early over there on the Princess. We're going to then have Skeleton Army easy to play against him now. Going to send in a Hog Rider minion attack. I did need to cycle through the minions in order to be able to get to the Hog Rider, so that's one of the reasons I did that. Knowing that he spent a lot of his cheaper like spells, I'm going to send in the Skeleton Army. They do actually not fully kill that giant thanks to the fact that he had that tornado in hand, but he's using a lot of spells on me, so I think now's a good time to drop a Goblin Barrel. If he logs the Goblin Barrel, we can just put a Princess over on the right side. Didn't have log in hand, so he did have to put a 4 elixir response down. He doesn't even really want to push the right lane, so this Electro Wizard, it's going to get some value, but we're going to try to make this a 1-0 match anyway, so theoretically that shouldn't hurt us too bad. So with the log out, we're going to do another attack over on the right side. I'm not really worried about a counter on the left because we know that we can use Skeleton Army pretty easily. Executioner is good, but just doesn't take out this hog quickly enough. He's down to 178 over there. I can probably just take that out with a couple of logs or some easy, cheap defense spell. Like, I could just log this Executioner right now. It's also within range of a Princess and one other small spell like the log. I think we're just going to get 2 Princess shots here, yeah. That's what it looks like. Okay. So we can just play defense for the entire game now, or we can try to pressure the other lane. I think that it's usually better when you have a 1-0 lead to try to go for a second tower. Otherwise, you can get caught up in, you know, just like playing defense and thinking that you're going to win, and then you wind up losing your deck. It's not a good time when that happens. So let's try to overwhelm this Electro Wizard here. He does have quite a good defensive setup, admittedly. That was pretty clutch. I think that we can keep this giant off the tower though with an Inferno Tower. The difficulty in dealing now with this Executioner is that I don't really have any like big tanky troop to take him out. So let's see if we can't push him off using the Ice Golem. Nope, he's still hitting the tower. Alright, that's a bummer. Not really sure what I can play over there to help that out. So, alright, it looks like we do in fact have to go for the 2 crown. Let's go ahead and do that over here. Princess is going to get some pop shots. Dang, this is not going well, is it? I guess I can push him off and then distract with the Inferno Tower there. Tower should finish him off while the Inferno... Nope, not going to be able to do that. Alright, so Giant is going to get a punch off maybe. Nope, actually the Skelly has pushed him away quickly enough. We are in trouble over here because I don't really have any way of dealing with this Electro Wizard. He's applying a ton of pressure. It's tough to keep the defensive setup going as strong as you want to when the heavy beatdown deck does connect. I should have played a lot more defensively early on and prevented the that last hit. Let's see if we can't get a Goblin Barrel Hog Rider attack to work here. That can be scary if they run out of splash damage options. You can always get a nice little hit in there. Okay, so we're not winning, but that got us a little bit closer. Gotta worry about a big attack now. I'm mostly concerned right now about... Oh boy, he's got lightning. Alright, we gotta take this giant out super fast. We only have 520 hit points left. Oh, he's going really aggressive on me too. Oh, we're still gonna get stabs from those goblins. They're in range. Nice. Okay, we won it. Couldn't finish that thing off on the right side with the miner, and so, yeah, got that 2-1 against looks like Mikey Clashers. Well played. Okay, so let's switch over to the third deck now. Let me see if we can't get the third deck list up. There it is. It's a Golem deck list. I actually don't think that I have it available right now. I need to build this deck. So please bear with me here while I construct it. The idea behind this deck is to just build up a massive push and double elixir time that your opponent cannot counter. You try to get cheap trades with them by using things like Baby Dragon kind of early on to... Where's my Baby Dragon? There it is. Early on in order to shut down pushes, pump up to gain a big elixir advantage, and then just go for the kill whenever you get that elixir advantage. So we're going to add lightning to the deck. Lightning, very good card. We've used it in most of our big tank heavy decks that we play. We're actually going to use archers because we do kind of need a semi-swarm troop. Tombstone is also used in this deck as well. We don't really need the chip damage that we would be otherwise looking for from a furnace. And so with the constant stream of troops to distract and ample ways to just get a little bit of chip damage in here and there, using some great support troops, particularly flying support troops like the Mega Minion and Baby Dragon, this deck can work wonders. So I think that I actually will start with a pump. He spent 3 on a Tombstone, so let's see if he's got a big spell. Nope, he doesn't. So let's lightning his pump over there. I might have actually been able to hit the Tombstone also with that lightning. I'm not entirely sure. I wanted to get it down relatively quickly. Oh, he's got a lightning of his own. Okay, well played. That Tombstone's not going to really give him very much help, though, because we're not attacking him, so he doesn't really need the defense that he's getting from that. So, let me see. I think I want to start slow in the back. We'll do a Mega Mini on the left side. I'm happy to play kind of the same lane that he is. I guess we can add on a Tombstone of our own. That Executioner is going to do great work against the Mega Mini. Unfortunately, we don't really have much of any way to prevent that from happening. We didn't even get a swing. That's how broken it is, guys. It's broken because it stuns the small and the medium-sized units, preventing them from making the big connection that you're looking for. Alright, so unfortunately I'm going to have to lightning this. I really don't like having to do that, but we do need to get this giant off, and I didn't really have any easy way to find that. So we'll make a little tiny push over there with some archers. Pump up in the back right. He did lightning our left side, so if he wants to use a lightning against a pump, we're going to force him to do that on the tower that's already gotten a little bit of help. Okay, so we're going into double elixir overtime pretty soon. I'm going to start off slow with another Tombstone out front, but then we're going to transition to the Golem. We don't have a pump up, but I think that's time for a good push. I don't know. I'm happy to invest a lot of elixir. I think Golem pushes generally do quite well against giant pushes. I'm not sure what he's playing for his win condition. We can actually lightning this right here. Oh, I would have liked to lightning that pump. I probably should have been a little more patient. But lightning and the log will be enough to kill the Executioner, as you can see there. So that's a good trade. So his giant's down. He's just playing defense at this point. We do have a lot of flying troops going in there, but Executioner is quite adept at taking out those big guys. Looks like we managed to get quite a bit of damage over on the left. He is pumping up, so he's trying to get another big push to connect against us. Let's see if we can't defend against this line of attack by distracting the giant with a Tombstone. We'll add on a Baby Dragon on the back end. He's going hard, man. He's out for blood right now. Wow, he's really going at it. I don't know if I can add a Golem on the front. I don't think I should have, actually. It's going to be harder to keep this... Can I lightning this guy? I think so, yeah. Oh, nope, that's not true. Okay, let's roll a log through here. That'll kill most of the skeletons. That might just do it right there. The Golemites are quite strong.